The Spinoff Podcast Network.
Talofa lava. I'm Madeline Chapman, editor at The Spinoff. If you have the means, consider supporting our high-quality journalism by becoming a Spinoff member. Sign up now at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is brought to you by SparkLab, offering inspiration and practical advice to help businesses find their edge. To hear more about SparkLab, including details about the latest events, workshops, and business tools, visit sparklab.co.nz. And now, here's your host, Simon Pound.
You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is made by The Spinoff with help from Callaghan Innovation, New Zealand's innovation agency. Here's your host, Simon Pound.
You will know the beer that is made by our guest today. You would have seen the cans with Churly, the mascot, with his big underbite pointy teeth and friendly colours and the fun names that sometimes riff on US politics, but always have a little something interesting going on, like the shower beer with a holder for the wall of the shower as just one example. But it all almost wasn't. Founder Andrew Childs was a lawyer in Wellington and changed career, navigated setbacks and injury, and grew his brand and business to today. Where now, Behemoth Brewing Company is running a Pledge Me Equity crowdfund to build a brewery large enough for demand and a 140-person restaurant with a real nose-to-tail approach. Depending on what day you arrive, you will get where they are up to on the animal, with the restaurant and on-site butchery run by Andrew's national champion butcher wife and co-force in the business, Hannah Miller. To chat the journey, the crowdfund, and beer, a favourite topic, Andrew joins me now. Kia ora, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, so you weren't always a brewer in Auckland. Tell me how it was that you got into law in Wellington and what got you out of it.
What got me into law is I think I probably just read too many John Grisham books growing up and maybe the practice, and I like to argue. So that really got me into it. Grew up in Miramar in Wellington and went to Vic Uni after Rongotai College. Which ironically has Parrot Dog breweries just down the road from my old high school. That definitely wasn't the case when I went to high school. And we really got into it, and I probably got about 80% the way through law school, and I liked some parts of it and some parts of it I didn't, but I'm stubborn, so I finished up. Became a barrister and solicitor of the High Court of New Zealand, did legal policy for IRD and ACC, everyone's favourite government departments. And got into beer. Probably, I started collecting beer mugs when I was on my paper run when I was 11. I didn't drink when I was 11, obviously, but there was something about the culture around beer in New Zealand, and probably a bit from my old man, that I was just like, I really like this. And, I was fascinated. I wrote papers on alcohol at secondary school that got really good marks, so much so that my teacher at the time wanted to keep it as a reference for his own booze collection. And it was just something always, there was always something about it. And then, started homebrewing. Probably, I went overseas and finished my law degree off in Uppsala in Sweden, did an exchange, travelled all around Europe, hadn't really travelled outside of Australasia before then, and then made up for lost time by travelling 20-something countries while I was overseas for 7 months. Tried a lot more different beers from around the world, and mostly around Europe. Really, what the inspiration came back for getting into beer is a mate of mine, probably my second year of university. I was drinking jugs of Tui at the Vic Uni Hall for $5 a pint, and the East Side Pool Club at the time, if anyone knows that from Vic Uni. And I still didn't think it was good beer, but it was cheap, and I was 18, 19. And then a friend of mine who was actually working, and anyone who's got been to uni and has a friend who actually has a full-time job and can afford to buy some kind of half-decent beer. The old malt house on Willow Street in Wellington got into it by drinking tasting trays of Tuatara. It's also because those tasting trays were incredibly cheap, but if you converted how much the tastes were, it's actually cheaper than buying regular pints. So and if you work at a bar, you know that pouring tasting trays is quite laborious and quite annoying. So if someone just orders them the whole time, it's quite annoying. But we kind of tried to go to different bar staff and really kind of and drink it at a cheaper rate. But we tried like 5 or 6 different beers that you'd never tried before, and that was kind of one of my like, wow, this is what beer can be kind of moments. So this was before I went to Europe, but around the way. But you just discovered that what beer could be, and then always had an interest for it. And how I got into brewing and out of law per se is that I remember the very moment that I was working at, I actually won't say if it was ACC or IRD, so I'm not kind of pointing at people. So I saw someone who was doing the same job as me, been doing it for 10 years longer, and maybe they might have been earning a little bit more money or something, and I just kind of like froze and goes, if I stay here, this is what I'm going to be doing in 10 years' time, and that kind of scared the bejeebus out of me, and I'd begun homebrewing beforehand. So how I got into homebrewing is my mate Paul Harrison who did a New Year's resolution and said I opened myself up to New Year's resolutions from everyone who was at this party, and one of them was you start homebrewing, and you've always wanted to, and I started it a few weeks later maybe, and then I had the bug from there. I started spending all my spare time homebrewing and researching and just learning about beer and learning about brewing, and I already had a pretty comfortable base there, but I got really into it, and then at some point I decided I wanted to quit my law job and get some brewing experience, so quit my job at ACC and started working at Falcon Brewer, just opened up in Wellington, great place, but they didn't actually start brewing for 12 months, so after 9 months I left, but it was, trying to, really taking a big pay cut and just focusing on that, and that's kind of where it started out. A lot of things have happened since then, but I was just like, this is what I want to do all in. It's kind of one of those things that if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it.
By the time you came to make the call to jump out of what I imagine was a pretty comfortably kind of paid and comfortable job at a government department, like they're not about to go out of business, had you had some success with your home brews, or what gave you the confidence to make that change?
I think that I was making some pretty good homebrews, and we had this really cool homebrew club in Wellington that we all gave each other feedback. Looking back at it now, I'd look back and go, those beers were kind of rubbish compared to what the kind of things that we like to do now. But I realised that I wouldn't have the time to get the experience to get a lot better if I didn't just go all in. And as I was probably 26, 27 at the time. No serious relationship. I don't think so at that point in time. And nothing too serious, obviously. And, I wasn't tied down to anything. And I was like, well, if I wait a few years and, I don't know, you've got a mortgage or you've got a job that you really like, it would be really hard to leave that. And at that time, I was like, as soon as I made the decision, it wasn't a hard decision. It was just like, I'm doing this. And, it had its struggles and ups and downs, but it seemed like a clear decision for me at the time.
And so you left the law job, and after, studying for a law degree is a really hard, long process.
It is.
And then you get the law job and you do it for a while, and then the decision to jump out. I guess you can always go back and get another law job if it doesn't work out.
Not now.
On one level. Yeah, not now. But at that moment, did people tell you were bananas?
My mum mainly. It's really my mum. My dad was all right. My mum was like, are you giving up this well-paying job? And I do remind her from time to time now, and we've been a bit more successful. But yeah, it was a pretty good decision I made that day, Mum. But, I did have a few people. But, I think I did have some people who were like, oh, you're young enough to, you can go bankrupt and still make the most of it. And I was like, I don't know, all the negative things kind of spurred me on even more, I think. Yeah.
And in terms of learning how to become kind of like a brewer that goes from, the amateur league to the pro league, the home brew to being a brewer proper, like there's such a community of all of these kind of generous spirited people that love talking about beer and love sharing it. And all the brewers seem from the outside to be a really collegial bunch. Like, how do you go from being a fan to kind of playing in the game?
It was, so I was like a real fanboy with some people, the likes of like Epic and 8Wired and stuff like that. They really were very influential on me, and we've done work with 8Wired and just these people who, I used to go to all these beer events and, sometimes going to beer events where brewers were generous enough to shout drinks back when I was a student, like I was talking about earlier, to being in the same kind of league. And it's it's different. We as I say, we'll probably get to this point, but we've never owned a brewery and we've always brewed with other people, and it's a really good community in the fact that we use up tank space that they would have sitting idle otherwise, and I get to create the things that I want to create. So it's been a different. Everyone's got a different journey in brewing. The one good thing I like about brewing is that there are people from all, scientists and people who have worked in the public sector and people who have come from all sorts of backgrounds just because of they've followed their passion and do what they like to do. So it is, it's been an interesting one, but it is a good community. Like any community, it's like 90-something% awesome, and there's always a little bit of tension between some people, and but it's a really cool. I wouldn't want to be in any other industry, that's for sure.
And how do you go from doing it? So, let's say you're getting your first big tank brew after being kind of on a small scale. Do you do like a test run at a small scale on your home kit, and then do you go into a big tank? Or what's the actual kind? Because I imagine if it doesn't quite go to plan, you've got a heck of a lot of beer to get through.
Yes. So I used to homebrew. I went after the one part that I skipped before getting into everything was I got headhunted to be the head of beer at iMake, which is Mangrove Jack's, the grainfather, biggest homebrew wholesale company in this half of the world. That brought me up from Wellington to Auckland. So I went around and brewed these fresh wort packs. So wort means unfermented beer. So pretty much you send out this big thing of malt liquid to brewers and they pitch yeast into it and that becomes beer. And did that at 5 or 6 breweries around New Zealand, like the likes of Twisted Hop, Hallertau, Deep Creek, 8Wired, all these guys. So kind of made some really awesome connections in there in that time. And we ended up doing our first brew at Twisted Hop down in Christchurch. And it was, you kind of go from a very small scale. So I did a lot of testing out this Grainfather all-grain brewing kit. So I did a lot of testing of stuff down there. But for the most part, I think apart from the first couple of brews, you do so many small-scale brews that you know what your flavour combinations are going to be for bigger brews. So we haven't done a test batch. So sometimes I joke that our test batch is 2,000 litres now, and some of our big scale stuff, the stuff in our Something Hoppy and Hopped Up and Pill 6-packs are 15,000 litre plus batches because they're in supermarkets around the country and exported, etc. So we definitely, we work hard to make sure that we're not really pushing the boat out too much. If it's a pale ale, we know what a good malt base is and we know what good hop combinations, and then we play around with different combinations. So we know that they're going to taste good, and maybe it might be a little bit different than what we expect it to be, but it's going to be within that realm. And for the most part, it's usually me nitpicking things, and I'm usually my biggest critic about, that's not quite what I wanted it to be. But, most people were like, that tastes fantastic. I was like, yeah, it's great, but it could be a little bit better.
There's that lovely expression that nature makes wine, but brewers make beer. And, how does it, for people that don't know about it, is it like, making scones and you just up the recipe for making more? Or is there like, because of the nature of hops, they may not be 100% consistent in flavour? Or what do you have to do once you go from kind of a batch to a huge container?
Yeah, so it's every year hops we use American, New Zealand, a little bit of Australian. We have used some German hops, but for the most part, it is mainly American and New Zealand hops that we use. Something called the alpha acids change pretty much every year, and the alpha acids relate to the bitterness that you're going to end up with in your beer. So you do have to scale up or down how much you're using. Our approach to making, especially pale ales and IPAs, double IPAs, hazy IPAs, lots of different types of IPAs, for the most part, is that we put everything in the back end. So the further towards the end of the boil you go, the less bitterness you pick up, but the more flavour you pick up. So we like to add as much flavour, and we have like a set amount of bitterness that we want, and then we try and I think of it as you can't hear on the podcast, but I'm doing air quotation marks in this a bit, as we like an allowance of flavour that we can have, and without having too much bitterness in there. 'Cause too much bitterness, depending on the beer, can make it unbalanced and not as drinkable. We still like a lot of bitterness in a lot of our hoppy beers, but yeah, we definitely change from season to season, depending on what the crop of hops. They can be quite different from year to year, so you do have to play around every year and kind of see what this year's hops are tasting like, and so you can have, for your core beers, you can keep those consistent.
In terms of like building the brand and the business out as well, so like everyone will know your cans because of the character Churly with the big underbite and the pointy teeth. Tell me about landing on that and having that identity running as a consistent thing across everything you've done.
Yeah, so his name's Churly because the very first beer we did was Chur New Zealand Pale Ale, our signature beer, if you will. I may have said that once or twice. So we really, we had some quite random labels from a couple of artist friends of ours for our first few keg-only releases. The first one was Celia Way Brown Ale, which was named after the mayor of Wellington, one of the reasons kind of Behemoth came to what it was because won this Wellington on a Pike competition, and we brewed with Yeasty Boys. Andrew Childs and Yeasty Boys was the Celia Way Brown Ale. Celia's a great lady, by the way. She's need to catch up with her for a pint at some point again soon. And so before that, and then we got Chur, and then we were talking with a designer friend. It was a friend of my dad's, and we got into it. And paid them a case of beer and a bottle of bubbles because one of the people didn't drink beer there. And we had this character for Chur, and I was like, the only reason we did it is they gave me some pictures about what we should do, and had this one thing about he had a thumbs up going, which he always does now pretty much because that's kind of his set position. And I was like, yeah, that looks like Chur. Like that's cool. And then the next beer came around, and I'm like, what the hell are we going to do? And we wanted to do an American Pale Ale, which is now Murica, which is it's one of our core beers as well now. And we're like, we could dress him up in some kind of like very stereotypical American thing. So he had kind of like the singlet, cowboy hat. He used to have an M16, which we've changed. I'm glad that we have changed it. Now it's just a banjo, which we think is funnier. It's and then we're like, we can keep doing this and really have a lot of fun. So we have unlimited scope to what we can do with Churly. And he's taken on a life of his own. Like a lot of we've just started doing some more merch and stuff that doesn't even say Behemoth on it anymore. It's just got a picture of Churly, and that's quite fun.
And those cans that have had a little bit of a political commentary, did you get some blowback from that once?
So we first did Dump the Trump just after he got the nomination. And we did it because it was funny, because it was like, who on earth thinks that Trump is going to get elected? It's a far-flung joke. I think they joked about it on Futurama like 10 years ago. Like, it was some far-flung, ha 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 ha. And we did this. We did like 3 batches of it, and it was very popular. It was in 500ml bottles at the time. And then he got elected, and I took it rather badly. I was down in Dunedin, and I was doing a Dunedin Beer Festival and doing an event and stuff like that. And I drank a little bit of that, right? I think like a lot of people around the world did. And you're going to do it again? I'm like, well, no, it's not funny anymore. I'm not doing it because it was meant to be funny. So we started doing impeachment sour ale, and we're like, okay, this makes a lot more sense. So we did a 5.5% peach sour ale with Golden Queen peaches from Hawke's Bay, and we've exported that around the world as well. A little bit to the United States, a bit to the UK, and all over the place. And then the flack really came, I don't know, a year and a half after he was in. So it was this time, nearly exactly this time last year. We were just like, I would have thought he would be gone by now. With all the crazy stuff that he's done, like one of, I don't know, 1,223 things he should have been done for.
Oh, I know. Isn't it remarkable?
It's
this will be it.
It's like
never it.
3 times today. Something's like, if Barack Obama had done that, he would have been,
He wore that tan suit once.
Yeah. Should have been impeached for that tan. No, it's mental. So we decided to bring it out again, and it's a very different thing when you're doing it for a sitting president. I guess we did think about it a little bit. We didn't think about the blowback because he's president now. And so what happened is we brought it out. It pretty much went to New World's Pack and Say the Four Squares all around New Zealand before any of the blow, a week earlier. So it was timed really well. And somehow some Facebook group called, we found this out only much later, that a Facebook group called The Deplorables, which has 500,000 members, got hold of this Facebook page from a little brewing company in New Zealand and shared it, and hundreds of people started giving our Facebook 1-star reviews. I mean, I don't think anyone cares about Facebook reviews. I know I don't really look at it, maybe for a restaurant or something, but we were just like, okay, this is nuts. And then it made it to the media, and more than 10, about 20 times as many Kiwis came back and gave us 5-star reviews. And then I was on breakfast TV and a bunch of radio shows and newspapers and online things, and it just exploded. I think we had 150,000 people look at our Facebook page in 5 days. It was mental. So the funny thing is, it was obviously great publicity for us, and the thing I like about it most is the outcome is exactly the opposite of what the guy is trying to terrorize our Facebook page wanted. And it was probably the craziest week of my life. It was pretty nuts. People hate phone calls. Calling up the office. People in my office, our accounts person stuff, would usually answer the phone. And I was just like, okay, next couple of days, I'm answering all these phone calls, and I just pick it up saying, hey, hello, Behemoth Brewing, Andrew speaking. Is this a nice call or a bad call? And a couple of old racists and some really weird phone calls. But I was just like, this is surreal.
I'll bet they're the people who always talk about protecting free speech as well.
I'm sure they're on talkback. I'm almost certain.
And your free speech can your free peach. That free speech.
Nice. I'm going to take that one.
And that impeachment can. There's a warmth to those cans. Even the political commentary, because of the pastely kind of colours and the fun kind of animation style. That mean that they're not hitting you over the head, and there's a real friendliness to the kind of the Chur range, even when you're ripping the whole head off of a Trump character and drinking that great peach thing. How important do you think that friendliness and that kind of warmth has been?
I think our whole thing and our whole philosophy is to make beer fun. Because what's the point of beer unless it's fun? No matter what the beer is, you're drinking it for fun. Socializing with friends, trying some new flavors that you haven't tried before in terms of more in craft beer. It's the whole point of it. So let's make the outside of the beer as fun as the inside of the beer. And that's our whole philosophy. We've done a couple of beers with really dark labels. We did one called Soven Slayer, which I thought was a great beer. It's Nelson Soven Double IPA, but it was really dark, and I was like, wow, this really isn't what we do. And I think people picked up on that, and it was like, no, we like to have fun. We've released 120 odd beers in the last we turned 6 next month, in the last nearly 6 years, and yeah, we just it's meant to be fun, and we want someone to pick it off the shelf and then realize how good the beer is when they drink it, so I think you've got to do both things.
When so many craft beers have kind of a vibe, often the visual vibe is a little bit like teenager who listened to Tool and just got Photoshop. They're all just a little bit dark and just a bit too much going on and 7 layers. And sometimes there's that rule that the worse the design, the better the beer.
Sometimes.
Anyhow, so yeah, and then how do you go about growing? So you're now in what kind of like more than 10 countries overseas?
11 now. I think we've just secured another 2, so hopefully in the next couple of months we'll be 13 countries, yeah.
That's so cool. And how do you go about, so you've been travelling around to other people's breweries or brewing rooms and then doing that, and we'll chat shortly about the crowdfunding to get your own home.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go about kind of like, does beer travel well? Does it turn up nicely overseas? Like, how do you do that?
So we've got a really awesome export manager, Roger. It's done a great job. He's worked in beer and wine exporting for a long time. He's our commercial director, so does a lot more of like the business focused things at the moment, and been really good in this whole crowdfunding thing at the moment as well. So hoppy beer is a hard one. You have to get it over there fresh. Like the UK, it takes a month to get beer over there. And then you're kind of in the hands of other people looking after it. Some beers travel better than others. Sours and stouts travel better than hoppy beers. Our biggest export market, and the one that we're focusing on, is Asia. Thailand's actually our biggest market. Not many people would suspect that Thailand's really into craft beer. We were over there last year, and our distributor put on a beer festival. If you ever get a chance to go to a beer festival in Bangkok, it's really fun. It is one of those things that you have to look after it and make sure that you're working with your distributors closely and making sure that beer's staying as fresh as possible. We only work with people who cold freight things the entire way. Like if you can imagine in Southeast Asia, if you leave beer out of the chiller for even a couple of days, it could be buggered. So we work with people who take that very seriously, and these guys distribute some of the big breweries like Stone and Deschutes, big American breweries and stuff like that. And we know that they look after all our products, and but it's something you've got to keep an eye on.
And let's talk about that crowdfund to get your own home. So after growing to the size, you've got great distribution here, you've got the export going, but you haven't had your own home up to now. So what are you trying to do?
So we've got an awesome site on the corner of Dominion Road and Charles Street in Mount Eden. I live in Mount Eden as well, and me and my wife Hannah, we work really closely together in the business, and we looked at sites. We pretty much we got married 2.25 years ago, and it was when Hannah's like, we're not allowed to start looking at any sites until we get married. So pretty much like a week after we got married, we looked at our first site, and so we looked at 32 sites in 18 months. I think we didn't give up, but we almost started looking outside of the area that we wanted to be in, which was pretty much Mount Eden, Kingsland, and around city fringe type of Auckland, and started looking at places more out because it was so hard to find somewhere. And then we found this one, and as soon as we saw it, we knew it was the one. And we worked really hard, and now we've got it for potentially 20 years plus to come. So we're excited to have this. The space, that's about the space. So we've been a contract brewer brewing at other people's facilities since our beginning. We've brewed at probably 10 in total in the last 6 years. And as we've grown and stuff, we've had to change and try and be flexible to make the most of the opportunities that come in front of us. And we're looking to bring in a lot of our production to our own place, and relatively, it's 5 minutes drive from top of Queen Street. It's as central as you can be without being in the CBD. So we want to be brewing all of our fun things, our hazy IPAs, our sours, and all that kind of fun stuff in our own space. Also, I'm married to a chef and butcher, and we're looking forward to having a place where you can experience beer and food matching, nose to tail dining, cured meats. My wife owns a lady butcher who does cured meats. You can find at Farrow and top end restaurants around Auckland and New Zealand, and combining those two things to an experience that there's not anything really like that in New Zealand, and we really want to kind of bring that, especially to Auckland as well, which, I'm from Wellington, and Wellington's got a great beer scene, and Auckland's getting really good, and we just want to help it get better.
Yeah, there is a great beer scene around Auckland, isn't it? But it's quite widely distributed. You've got
Exactly.
to go. You've got to
It's like everything in Auckland, eh?
You've got to travel like great distances out to Hallertau and Liberty, and then it's quite cool that there's now this kind of congregation happening in the area where you're landing. And so you'll be, just for people who know Auckland, you'll be kind of like by where Silver Bell, the supermarket is. Is that kind of right? Like on the Dominion Road extension near where where it turns into around the corner from Eden Noodles.
Yeah, that's Eden Noodles is like the benchmark. Wherever there's a line outside, people getting noodles, we're just down the road from that. Wherever there's that big Chinese supermarket, which go there on Fridays, some bargains there.
Yeah, silver was out of control.
Yeah, it's nuts. And Target Furniture's right there. But yeah, in terms of the beer scene, the beer mile, I think it's kicking off this Saturday. I'm not going to be in town, unfortunately. And it's kind of starting Galbraith's. There is Save Ferris, which is now a really cool arcade craft beer venue. Downstairs is Beer Jerk Bunker, which if you're a beer geek, they've got this ridiculous cellar of crazy beers that if you want to geek out, it's a great place to go. And there's about a 15-minute walk down to us, which sounds like a long walk for a lot of people in Auckland, to be fair, but it's not very. It's very much downhill coming down there. And then we've got Garage Project's tasting room, about 4 minutes walk from us. Keep walking down. You've got Flight 605, and I think Beer Spot's opening up there not too far away, and then our mates at Urban Walk down there. So that is really the beer mile. It's so they're starting the beer mile, and we're looking forward to being a big part of that.
And tell me about so you'll be bit different out of those and having your own 140-person restaurant and butchery on site. That's quite a lot to happen all at once, isn't it? To make a restaurant and of that size plus all of the brewing. And the nose-to-tail idea where, depending on what day you arrive, that's where you're up to in the animal, that's where the menu's going to change to.
Yeah. Well, it's just this whole total utilization. That's a thing that Hannah works incredibly close. She only works directly with farmers, free range farmers from right from Invercargill for Leland's lamb to places like Hohora and stuff like that, getting her pork or pigs, free range pigs who have their own beach, and it's really good stuff. But we're planning on having your core burgers, sausages, all the stuff that you can make from those animals, and the staple, half a dozen staple things. So you can always come in and get it. But then at the same time, just like the beer, which will be constantly rotating, you'll have different menu items that we're changing daily. A cow only has so many steaks. And so we might only do a steak night, come on a Tuesday, get it, and get steaks, that kind of thing. So really we can make sure that we're using all of it. Nothing goes to waste. And everything that's edible, obviously.
Eyeball Tuesday.
Yeah.
Hoof Thursday.
It's the hooves and the eyeballs,
sausages.
Yeah. Not going to be the mainstays in the sausage. Maybe for the Halloween party, I don't know. But really, there's a lot of waste in the food industry, and it's pretty terrible. And so keeping that down, and then also being able to make something fun that other people don't have. And a lot of the cured meat that we do, if you don't use it, we can cure it. We can have 1,000 kg drying curing fridge, so we can lots of weird and beautiful cured meats that my wife specializes in. It's going to be really fun. And we're looking at cool things like using the same spices in a piece of cured meat, say in a salami, that we use in a beer, and we can launch them on the same day and do exclusive food and beer pairings and stuff like that. And it's something that she's been doing for a long time, and we've been doing beer and food events. I'm down in Blenheim doing a beer and meat event this weekend, and we've done many of them. We did one yesterday actually. So it's really a thing. A lot of places around the world, beer and food matching is just an everyday occurrence, and I think it's starting to get there in New Zealand, but we've still got a long way to go, and we're looking forward to pushing that.
It's so cool just to go sideways from the crowdfunding that we'll jump to, because people can get involved and become part owners of this new brewery and restaurant situation. But it's so cool, this flowering again of beer, because I'm sure, as you would have experienced when you travelled through all of those countries across Europe, for so many for so many centuries, beer was this exciting thing that people made at home with whatever fruits or grasses or flowers or botanicals or whatever happened to be to hand, and they were full of full of flavour and variety and seasonal. And then for about 50 years, the world just became this bland. There's like 4% things that all say that they're all kinds of things, but they're just kind of lagers. and now the world
from Waikato or Canterbury or something like that.
And now the world's just opening back up again to kind of that infinite variety.
Yeah, I think it's really great. Like in New Zealand, we definitely punch above our weight, as we do with a lot of things, but with beer especially, like we're still ahead of Australia. We win nearly anything per head of population, but that's what we do. But America's gone from, in the last 2 years, it's gone from 5,000 breweries to 7,000 breweries in 2 years, and that's kind of crazy. We're at about 200. I think it's just the course of everything. Like New Zealand used to be all about cask wine back in the day. I know that I didn't see a bottle of wine at my parents' house that it was casks only while I was a kid, and now that's not as much of a thing. And I think craft beer is moving in that same way. Same with anything that's food and beverage. Like instant coffee it was everything back then. And whenever I go to a hotel and there's only instant coffee, I'm very annoyed. But I think it's all about flavor, and it's about quality over quantity. Occasionally it's quality and quantity depending on the situation, but it is really just about life's too short to eat and drink things that don't resonate with you. And I think that's what people want. They want something that's tastes delicious and really is a point of difference and goes well with a meal, is a conversation starter, and all those things. And I think it's just part of like the food and beverage movement, and beer's playing its part in that.
Yeah, and it's such an exciting time when there's so many exciting new things to try all the time. And so back to the brewery situation. So you're going to have obviously your own brewing. You're going to have 20-something guest taps on site as well.
Oh, so 20-something of our own beers, but we're planning on having a permanent collaboration tap. So we brew with someone both either domestically or of mates from overseas, and then we showcase a couple of their beers at the same time and include some of their beers in the fridge, just so we can kind of showcase friends one at a time. Like, it's a really cool industry, and I don't want it to be 100% about us. We really want the craft beer industry to grow as a whole. And being a contract brewer, we have been guests of so many people and for 6 years, and we really want to give back to the community that's helped us so much. Yeah, so 20-something of our own. Yes, we're going to have a 3,000 litre kit, double fermented 6,000 litres, more of the stuff that you'll find around supermarkets and liquor stores and bars around New Zealand. And then we're going to have a 600 litre kit, which will be these really cool, fun one-off beers that you will probably just find at our place and maybe at a festival or something like that, and really let us, flex our creative muscles.
And so, how can people get involved through the Pledge equity crowdfunding you're doing, and why equity crowdfunding? Like, how much of the company are you looking to give away, and what's the benefit for you in getting your customers involved?
I think it's a really big thing. It's like, we now have a really cool following, which is still really cool. It's still kind of mind-boggling that how many people drink beers. Like, I used to get the same buzz of sharing my homebrew that I do now with people, drinking my beer at the pub or buying at the supermarket or something like that. We've got we need quite a bit of capital to get everything up and running, and we thought, well, if we can do this and we can get our fans involved at the same time and bring people along with the ride, we really want to just expand the family and really get people involved with what we're doing. And people having a piece of the pie. And I think when people have got something invested in it and they can share in our successes, like the more people, when you share something with a loved one, it feels better. But if you can share something with a massive group of people, like when people go to stadiums, it's so much more visceral if everyone can experience this. So we really just want people to share in our successes and be part of it. And also, it's not just the pub, so people are investing in Behemoth as a whole, like whether it's us at our pub or if it's us selling to Henry's Central City, Dunedin, or something like that, like or us exporting to, to China or anywhere. It's really just want people to be involved with what we're doing. And yeah, it's exciting. Me and my wife just did a roadshow around New Zealand. We went to Christchurch, Wellington, Tauranga, and Auckland 4 days in a row, Thursday to Sunday last week. And end of May for people who are listening to this later, 2019. So it was so great to have heaps of people just come along and ask us the questions, ask us hard questions, and they did. The first one was question was, what happens if you drop dead? The first one of the all 4 days. So it was really good to chat with people and see how excited people were to be a part of it. So yeah, we're excited for it.
Yeah, and that's a hard question, but also it's not a job without danger, is it? I mean, you had a terrible accident that you came back from pretty early on in brewing.
Yeah, it's 3.5 years ago now. It was something that kind of still haunts us who are involved in it. But burnt 40% of our body. But we've just really, it was a horrible brewing accident. But I think New Zealand and the world kind of learnt a little bit about safety in brewing from that, and if anything, it's just made me and my buddy who was involved more resolute in what we're doing. And it's like, this is not going to stop us. And now both of us are some of the most highest awarded brewing companies in New Zealand, and we're just spending every day trying to do what we do best and bring good beer to people, and that's kind of reinforced the belief in what we're doing, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, it hasn't had it's had its share. Like that was a very hard thing to come back from, I'll bet. But yeah, it looks like it's been like a lot of success. But I imagine a lot of work. Like if you're making 40 brews a year and doing all of the kind of things that it takes to run a company, and doing the press and doing the planning for the brewery, and then doing all of the work that you have to do for compliance. Like, it must be a real slog.
It's, 80-hour plus weeks for 6 years. And I started as a one-man band. We've got 9 of us and a couple of casuals now, and everyone works incredibly hard for the same purpose. And yeah, it's... My wife showed me his Facebook posts, and there's this thing of like under the surface and above the surface. Above the surface, it's medals and, being able to travel and drink some fun beers and stuff like that. Everything that you don't see, stuff that's not worthy of going on Facebook, is pressure and stress and all those things. And that's just part of being an entrepreneur, and everyone focuses on the really cool things and like, Andrew, so lucky, blah, blah, blah. And I am incredibly lucky. The harder I work, the luckier I get. But it should never, anything like this or any business that you're taking, like, unless you're 120% with it, you shouldn't do it. It's because it is a lifestyle. I've definitely made sacrifices. I don't really have any hobbies anymore, apart from, I really like beer still, which is good. But you have to make all these sacrifices, and it's not all smiles and sunshine. That's for sure. But is it worth it? Yes. But are there hard and difficult things along the way? Absolutely. It's not. If mates of mine see my Facebook page, I'm not posting up saying I'm doing compliance work or whatever at 11:30 at night, or I haven't had a weekend for a couple of months or a few months or whatever, or yes, I'm in Hong Kong this week, but I'm waking up at 6 a.m. to do paperwork so I can get 6 or 8 hours worth of paperwork out before I can go in and do some work, which is going to visit customers and doing events and stuff like that. So it's a lot of work, but it's a lifestyle, I guess.
What advice would you have to someone who's sitting there in a comfortable job with a dream burning away?
If you want it badly enough, and if you think about it and go, okay, this can actually happen, do it. I wouldn't want to die wondering, but it will be hard. I didn't pay myself for years and lived off credit cards and all that kind of stuff. Should probably pay off that credit card. It's incredibly hard. But if you want to do something, and New Zealand's, I've met one of these things that I meet all these great entrepreneurs now that I never thought I'd be kind of meeting before, and I mean, everyone kind of has something. No one's done it the same way, but everyone's got the same thing in common: is that they've run with it and really just, all-encompassingly do what they do. But being an entrepreneur is definitely not for everyone. It is. I do know some people who have gone back and started working for other people. Not a huge amount, because it's a certain type of lifestyle, and you have to be a certain type of person to really take things, and run with it. And but if you can do it, you can do it. Imagine New Zealand without entrepreneurs. It would be a boring place, and I guess it would probably be all people from overseas who have just come over and did it instead. So it's
And one last question that we ask everyone is like, how will you and how do you define success? Like, what's your goals?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I'm one of those people that, if I had a job as Prime Minister of New Zealand, which would never want to do that, I don't know, would want to see if I could have a job at the UN. I guess like Helen Clark, I guess. Maybe something, I don't know. I'm always looking for the next thing. But at some point, it would be nice to relax and look over what we've done, but that time is a long time away. So defining I think defining success is you can only do it after things have happened, because I don't think there's such thing as success in everything in life, because if you succeeded at everything, what's the point at living? And you might as well keel over because there's nothing left to do. Unless your success after that is just, hanging on your couch and watching Netflix, in which case that sounds like some pretty nice success.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming and sharing your story today. That's Andrew Childs, the founder and CEO. Do you call yourself a CEO? Is that what you do in breweries?
I have not. I think it's gone somewhere. I'm managing director. I put managing director coming through customs just in case they don't check my luggage for beer or hops or anything like that. I hope no one at customs listens to this. But
the guy who is responsible for all the problems and all the good things at Behemoth.
That's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And if you're interested in getting involved, there are investment statements you'll be able to access on Pledge Me to find out all of the potential benefits and risks of getting involved in a crowdfunding venture, owning a part of a brewing company. Thank you very much for coming and sharing your story today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much to Tina Tiller for producing, and thank you very much for listening.
You've been listening to Business is Boring, presented by Simon Pound, and brought to you by the Spinoff and Callaghan Innovation.
From the Spinoff Podcast Network, that was Business is Boring, brought to you by SparkLab. Make sure you're following Business is Boring wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information on SparkLab, visit sparklab.co.nz. Ready to rediscover the joys of cycling? With over 300 kilometres of cycle paths across Tāmaki Makaurau, jumping on your bike and going for a ride is such a fun way to discover the city from a different perspective. Cycling is getting more and more popular across Auckland, so now's a great time to join the hype and give cycling a go. Head to at.govt/cycling to find your nearest cycleway today. The Spinoff Podcast Network.